Today's video, I'm going to show you and highlight the main issues that can happen with plastering if you don't control the background you're working on. And I'm going to show you some potential pitfalls and where you'll go wrong and show you exactly how to fix them. But for now, I'm going to plaster this wall. I'm going to get the plaster on and we're going to judge and see each side compared next to each other. So let's get into it in today's video. I'm going to plaster the wall and I'm going to show you where it goes wrong. But first, let's just apply the plaster. So the plaster's been set to the wall. Now I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to come back in 5 minutes and see what both sides look like. Okay, so give it a bit of time. Now I didn't quite make the 5-minute mark. I made a cup of tea, I was a bit later. So it's been around 8-9 minutes. So let's check up on the walls now and see what we're looking at. On this side, you can put your fingerprints in. The plaster is still quite wet. And you can probably trowel it. So still trowel it, still got a bit of play, still fill in. Now even this is very accelerated. Hardwall as a product sucks the plastering really fast. So even when you prime it to the max, it's still going to pull in a lot faster than say an existing wall. Well, let's check the other side. It's solid, you can't put the fingers in. So where this section here, you can see, you can leave fingerprints in. This section, really got to push it, really firmed up. There's one section up here, which is okay, which I'll explain in a minute. But this is really firmed up. Now, this has literally been around 10 minutes into the process. Grab the trowel, let's see. That is really hard, look. It's almost dry. See that? I can guarantee that's going to start cracking. Now that is the difference between the two sides. I'm going to take you back in time by about 25 minutes. I'm going to show you exactly how these walls are prepared and I'm going to explain exactly why this has happened. So let's go back in time and I'm going to walk you through everything, and this is probably the biggest thing you'll learn in plastering. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. We've obviously got a hard wall plaster. This is solid plastered wall, pretty tight. But the thing is, with this product and with this type of plastering, it's very porous. Now this, as a product, is called British Gypsum Hardwall. It's a backing plaster and it's designed to be applied on bricks and blockwork. And the thing is, once it dries and you leave it to dry, this has been dry for about 4 days, the longer you leave it, the drier it gets and the more porous it becomes. And that basically means anything you put on top of it, like a plaster, even a paint, it's just going to suck the moisture out of it. So this is probably its driest state, which means this is going to be really aggressive on anything you put on top of it, i.e. plaster. Now I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to get a wall ready. So this is going to have a totally different preparation to this one. First off, we've got a strong mix of PVA glue. It's probably 3-to-1. And actually looking at it, it's probably a bit thicker than that. We're probably looking at the 2-to-1 mark. I'm going to put a tight coat on each side and then we're going to see what happens. And then we're going to prepare the other side to my left here, totally different. So let's do that. Just literally whack it on. At the same point, I'm going to put a bit of PVA on this freshly plastered wall. This surface is nowhere near as porous as that. We're just going to check the hang times. This is just going to sit in the background for a minute, so ignore this, but this is here for a reason. I'm going to explain all in a minute. So, nice little patch there. Come back to that. Now they've both had 1 coat of PVA. That is it. This and this are on par at the moment. They've both got the equal amount of PVA on the wall. Now this is only going to have 1 coat. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to put 2 coats on this one. And that way, with 2 coats of PVA, we're going to control the suction a lot more on this side than we are on this side here. You can see already, the sections on this where it's pretty much dry. You can see how that sits and it spreads so much easier now it's had that initial coat of PVA. And that means that we've sealed the hardwall. We've given it 1 initial coat, but it means it's sealed to the point now when you put the second coat on, it's hanging around a lot more. That water isn't drying up as fast as this section, it's hanging, which means in this part of the render we've controlled it. So watch, let's see the difference now in how this PVA hangs around compared to the other side. Look at the difference between the two sides. This is still wet. You can see the water is falling down and it's dripping down, which means the water is hanging on. It's not being sucked in by the plaster now. That means it's sitting on the surface and it's not being absorbed, which shows we've controlled the suction. This looks like the exact same wall we started when we walked into the room. It looks like it's had hardly anything on it. It's pulled all that moisture through, and all that PVA that we put on top has kind of been absorbed. There's patches, I must admit, there's a patch there where you can see the PVA is sitting on the surface a little bit. Generally, it looks like the exact same wall as when we started. Now, there's two things we need to cover here. One, if the PVA sits on top and it looks like it's still hanging around on the surface, that means we've controlled the suction of the wall. That means that once this section is finally dried, this should be okay for the plaster. If it's still dry like this, that means it's not controlled. This means that when we apply the plaster to the wall, anything you put on top is just going to be sucked out and drained off. Another big telltale sign is coloration. Now look at that section of the wall compared to this. You can tell this has been sealed, and feel it, it feels tacky. This section of wall, you can tell there's PVA on there. When you touch it, it's tacky to the touch, and you can still feel that the PVA is present on that wall. You touch this, it feels dry, you can still feel the dust from the hard wall, which means anything you put on has been sucked in. So there's two telltale signs. One is how the PVA sits on the surface, and two is coloration. And if you get this wrong, that's when everything else after fails. There are the differences, and this is where all plasterers fail. It's knowing your suction rates and knowing how to control it. Now we wait for this to go tacky, and that is a perfect time to apply your plaster. Whilst it's still tacky, there's still a bit of moisture on the surface, which means when you hit it with a plaster, you've got a bit more room for play. Now this is where we're going to mix the plaster, and we're going to go to the point where I skim it. Now, the big question is, how do we bring this back? How do we get this wall to the point where we can start working it again? Now, the big thing is we've got to get the moisture back into the product, and we need to control the suction. Like we said before, it's all about controlling the suction of the product. Now, we need to add some liquid and add some moisture to this plaster, and I'm going to show you a secret method of how to get it back using one little product. So now, here's the thing. If you have a sprayer, then that's ideal, but water brush will work. Literally just go over the whole wall. Just get it wet. Wet it up again. Get it back to the point where as if the plaster is back to its state as if it would be a normal plastered wall. Now these, I'm not a big fan of sponge float plastering, but for bringing back plaster they are perfect. So what we're doing is going to take away any lines, any of the hard ripples that are set. We're going to take them out with this. And they just help to reset the plaster. Now you might not be a big fan of sponge float plastering, but to have these in your van is crucial, because trust me, no matter how good you are, you will still get hit by the plaster pulling in too fast. It still happens to me, and usually it's because I haven't prepped the walls correctly when I'm rushing. That's why. So, sponge float away, and now when we apply the second coat of plaster, this area should be controlled. Now we want to apply the plaster whilst this is still wet, because what it's going to do, you're still going to have the moisture on the top coat, and it's going to give you more time for the second coat of plaster. Now another rule of thumb, the thicker the plaster, the thicker you apply it, the more time you're going to get, because it's got to get through a lot more product, it's got to get through a lot more moisture to dry it up. So if you are really struggling, put a thicker coat on. Now usually second coat's plaster are quite thin, make sure it's thicker. So the second coat of plaster's on the wall, and we've controlled the suction a little bit, but now let me tell you, even at this stage that is going to pull in fast, because the preparation wasn't done at the beginning. So even now I'm going to be rushing, and this is going to take up a lot faster than this side that was controlled effectively. That is just the way it is. So one last tip before we go, if you are plastering on a hard wall, plaster half the amount, because even with the preparation, it still pulls in extremely fast. It's just the way the product is. Going to be plaster onto hard wall, even sand cement render. Just plaster half the amount because it pulls in a lot faster than an existing wall. This was the last video in the Plastering Crash Course series. If you want to know how to plaster a solid wall like this, if you wanted to know how we did this backing plaster to begin with, if you wanted to know how to get the perfect mix in plastering, if you want to know how to prepare like a king, then click this video here because that's the full Plastering Crash Course. Hope you've enjoyed it. We've really put a lot of time into it and we've shown you the full scope of plastering. So if you like this video, click that there to watch the full series, 5 parts altogether, and subscribe here. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.